this would be posted on YouTube. So if anybody's watching it later, the opinions that I present today are as of today. As always, I have the right to change my opinion anytime, and you all have a right to disagree with me or discuss with me respectfully. So feel free to do that. Um, Also, the opinions I share in this webinar are my own, based on my own experience and expertise in the industry. Uh, any vendors or OEM names that I mentioned today, it's going to be strictly for discussing the topic. It doesn't mean endorsement of any vendor or any, I guess, negative opinion about any product or any OEM. This is strictly to discuss the topic at hand. I'll start with a quick introduction. My name is Mubarik Mustafa. I'm a senior consultant with ACET Solutions with over 30 years of experience in the industry, starting from industrial automation and control systems, and then for the past decade or so in cybersecurity. And I have a few credentials to go along with my experience. Today, the topic is patch management in an OT environment. In all of these webinars, I try to establish the context of the discussion because some folks may not necessarily be from the OT background. In fact, Mamuna, if you can throw the first poll, I have a few poll questions. I'd appreciate if everybody can try and answer those quickly within 30 seconds or so. It helps me understand your background. So the first one is already on the screen. It helps me understand your background, and I can tailor my discussion based on the type of audience I have. So we'll wait another maybe 10 seconds or so. So please quickly pick your answer. Which of these domains is the closest to your primary job functions? Are you from IT security, OT security, or strictly control systems? So I see it's a little bit more than half are from OT security, which is good because that's the topic today. A few folks from control systems background, which will be good for them to understand. They'll be able to relate to it quite a bit. And from IT folks, definitely you'll also get something out of it. Next one, please, Mamuna. So how often do you install patches on OT systems? And I'm asking you personally, especially those who are involved in installing such patches. Do you do it weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly, or not at all? All right, so we have a, where did it go? I cannot see the poll. I'll go back to, where is it? All right, so as expected, it's either quarterly, yearly, or never, which makes sense because that's how it is in OT environments. Next one, please. Do you check for ICS OEM approval before installing patches on OT computers? Do you get permissions or approvals from the vendors, the Honeywells and Yokogawa and Rockwell and Siemens and all these companies before you install the patches? Very good. So I see that a lot of folks, at least half of you, you always check before you install these patches. Some you do most of the time or sometimes, and a few they never check, which is also possible in a lot of industries. I've seen that as well. All right, let's quickly move on to the next one, please. We take a few minutes to get this done. It helps. You'll see later in the discussion, it'll help us. Have you ever experienced an unplanned downtime during patch installation on OT environment? And this is again, it doesn't say it in the question, but it is strictly for the OT environment. Have you shut down a server, or worse, have you shut down any part of the plant when you were installing patches? If you're like me, then for sure you have. I've done that, and I say it without any kind of hangups that it happens. And I see most of folks have done that, so I'm sure you will be able to relate to the discussion we'll be having. All right, good. Next, please. Do you use a central patch management solution? So I see most folks don't use a central patch management solution, which is again very typical in OT environment. We'll wait about 10 seconds and then there's going to be one last question. All right, next, please, the last one. And as a tricky one, this one, the last two are tricky. Do you use a central patch installation or deployment solution? It could be different from management, could be the same. Very good. The answer is very much similar, in line with the first one, that most folks don't use patch deployment solutions as well in OT, and it's for obvious reasons. We'll talk about it in a little more detail when we get in. Okay, thank you very much. So we'll just leave it at that. As you can see on the screen, especially for those of you who have been involved in the control systems or OT side in any way, including myself, we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. We need to install the patches because we need to protect the systems from cyber threats, but the whole thing about availability and all that, that's always the dilemma. So what do? It's not the same as IT. A bubble pops up and we reboot the computer and all. So most of you may be familiar with that, and we'll talk a little bit more about it going forward. So the polls helped with this part of the discussion. I'll skip these slides basically, and I take a couple of minutes just to explain what the OT environment is. But I see a lot of folks are already from OT background, so basically the control systems are the computer systems that monitor and control industrial facilities. I'll leave it at that. It could be industrial process plants like refineries, or power systems, power plants, substations, control centers, or it could be SCADA systems in a utility distributed environment, maybe in the water sector or something like that. So all these systems, they're all called OT systems, and that's what we're going to focus on in terms of the topic today. These are just the examples of OT systems. So if any one of you works on these systems, you will definitely be able to relate to what we're going to talk about. Couple of things that especially in terms of patch management, it differentiates it from IT, is that the OT environment is very distributed. It's very segmented. It's not one flat network. Even if in an IT environment, multiple plants, multiple offices are connected together, it's still pretty much a flat network, maybe some VLANs and all. But the OT environment is very segmented, very distributed, sometimes even disconnected. It has specialized software, which all of you know, those of you working in OT side. It's industrial operations, we know about that as well. But the last one is the important part, that like it or not, most of the OT systems, at least the servers and workstations, they run on Microsoft operating systems. So those of you who are Linux fans, well, yeah, I mean, that's what it is. Uh, that's how life is. Microsoft is the dominant player in most industrial control systems environment. So we will basically focus all of our discussion on Microsoft patches because that's the biggest pain point for folks like us. So a little bit about patch management. So why do we install patches? We do it because it is fun. Um, I think that I don't need a poll to get the answers from all of you, whether you enjoy installing patches or not. If you're anything like me, I used to hate it when I used to do it when working for the end users. It's one of the most painful parts of our job as control systems engineers or OT security engineers. So definitely, we don't do it because it's fun. It's sometimes, very occasionally, we install patches to get additional features. But in most cases, no. The real reason is to close any known security vulnerabilities. That's basically the real reason we install patches, that we are scared of the new bugs or the new, I guess, gaps that are discovered in Microsoft operating system or any other Microsoft products, and we need to close those because we don't want any attacker to exploit those and get into our system. So basically, it's at the end of the day, it's all about risk reduction. I want to talk about a little bit because that was the trick. So the last two questions about patch installation versus patch management. So I want to talk about that first. Patch installation is a simple process. You download the patch, and obviously in an OT environment, we're not talking about my computer getting automatic updates and at midnight and rebooting. In most cases, we have to download the patch either manually or through WSUS or some other tool. We have to transfer it to the computer in the OT environment, and then we have to install the patch, verify it, and reboot if required. So fairly straightforward, but this is what I call patch installation. And I differentiate it from patch management. Patch management is all about knowing what you have, which patches are already installed and where, and then deciding which patches should be installed and when and where. And as obvious from the response to the poll questions, most people don't install patches because it's a nightmare to install patches in OT environment. So if we are able to manage that process, that we are able to decide in an effective manner which patches should be installed, when and on which devices, it will make our life a lot easier while keeping us secure from cyber threats. So the patch management is definitely not the same as patch installation. I emphasize that because a lot of folks, they kind of equate the two. So what are the challenges of patch installation in OT environment? As the polls obviously suggest, that the biggest challenge is that you have a lot of legacy operating systems. Literally yesterday, I was talking to somebody who had done assessment of a client's facility, and the client still has Windows NT installed on some of the control systems. I'm not sure how many of you have actually worked on Windows NT, but yeah, that's still out there. And for sure, Windows XP is for sure out there. So legacy operating system, the patches are not even available. And even if we have some stash of old downloaded patches somewhere, or we get hold of them, installing them in the OT environment is a nightmare. But the bigger challenge is segmented networks. So I've thrown just a random architecture where you have the enterprise network, the process information network possibly, and then multiple plants network. So if you look at it, that some of the computers are not even accessible directly. So if I need to install patch on this so-called safety computer, it is connected to a PLC here, and doesn't even have a path, an IP path, a routable path to any of my patching servers. So network segmentation where the computers are either disconnected, maybe, possibly like these remote support computers. A lot of laptops are used in an OT environment, which are used to connect directly with the PLCs, but they are not necessarily a part of a domain of the OT where they can be patched on a regular basis. Similarly, there's a lot of manual installation involved. Automatic patch installation in OT environment in most cases is not done, or even if it's done with a lot of manual input. So that's also a challenge, getting everything done, either pushing the patches manually or going all the way out to the actual server and workstation and manually rebooting. So a lot of things have to be done manually to install the patches in control systems environment. A lot of people say, hey, why can't we use something like WSUS to push it? Well, we'll see. And then there are operational constraints as well. If your experience is anything like mine, when I used to go out and ask permission from the control room operator that I'm here to go to the rack room to install the patches, they used to say, well, get out. There's an upset in the plant and you're not allowed to touch anything, so leave the room. So there are a lot of operational constraints as well from industrial operations perspective, which make the life difficult for somebody who wants to install patches. Similarly, there's a lot of challenges for patch management side of it. And as I said, that the patch management is not about the actual installation, it's about knowing what you have and deciding what to install and when. The biggest challenge we have is the availability concerns. In industrial facility, availability is the king. We all know that, the CIA triad, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. It's an overused thing, but it's still a fact. You cannot reboot a server or a workstation just because you're installing the patch. So your biggest concern is availability, and the next biggest is also availability. And the next one is also availability. Everything that you do regarding patch management, it's going to be driven by availability. Everything else, including security, will be a secondary concern. Reboot is not always possible. In fact, I would like to restate it that reboot is rarely a possibility, unless it's a non-critical computer. But the biggest challenge that I used to face was the inadvertent downtime risk, that I've gotten the permit from operations and everything, and I told them, well, it's not going to have a reboot or it's not going to have any impact on the operations. And I start installing the patch, and we all know that when you start installing the patch, Windows behaves. And I'm talking about not just a stable Windows 11 or maybe Windows 10, all the way back to XP and maybe even NT, and God forbid, Windows 95. You don't know what's going to happen when you start installing the patches. So inadvertent downtime risk, that is a challenge when we talk about management of patches. We need to think of, should I install the patch here or not? It's not about the installation process itself. Deciding which patch should be installed, when and where. Should I is it even worth installing the patch, or do I need to do something else to protect my assets from cyber threats? Then this whole thing about compatibility with the OT and ICS software, as the poll suggested, the answer suggested that some folks do that. Half the folks, they get the permission from the ICS OEM before they install the patch. So, well, kudos to you, because that itself is a pain. And we'll see that in the next couple of slides, that just figuring out which patch I can install on which computer, that itself requires a lot of sort of artificial intelligence in human beings. So compatibility is also a question that comes into play when we talk about what should we install and where. And then, of course, the time and resource required, because if you add all this up, somebody has to think of what to install where, and then it has to be a manual process. It cannot just be, hey, click a button on WSUS and everything gets pushed out to the computers. The computers reboot automatically and everybody lives happily ever after. It doesn't work like that. So I actually have a personal experience on this one, that I used to be responsible for a huge industrial facility, and it used to take us 3 months to install patches on all the computers, all the servers and workstations. starting from one side, and by the time you finish it, it was 3 months. So the time and resources required is also a factor when you decide which patch to install, when and where. So obviously, you see from all this discussion that the real patch management is this highlighted part, deciding which patch to install, when, and where. That's it. That's what patch management is. Patch management is not about installation. It's not about WSUS. It's about the intelligence that we, OT security engineers, or anybody who's responsible for installing the patches, the processing that they have to do to decide which patches to be installed and where and when. So let's talk a little bit in more detail about some of these challenges. This is obvious. Seems like a lot of you are from industry, so you fully understand what I'm talking about. Uh, the the requirement, the constraint of availability, whether it's reboot, planned reboot, or inadvertent, either way. But let's talk a little bit about more detail into compatibility with the OT/ICS software. So I'll skip this. The availability part, you already know. The compatibility with ICS software. So I've basically chosen a couple of links, not to pick on any particular OEM, but just to make a point on how the process works. So if I click on this first one, it's gonna show me, let me just open up here. It is this one. So Rockwell Automation, I'm sure a lot of you know, they're one of the control system OEMs. Their PLCs and other SCADA software, FactoryTalk and all are installed in a lot of facilities in the world. And this just makes the point about why it is important. They're saying, well, literally on the website, that it is strongly recommended that Microsoft updates are not applied or installed until the update has been fully qualified by Rockwell Automation. So this is just to reiterate that this whole idea about why do we need approval from the OEM, because they want to test it to make sure that once you install the patch, it's not going to break anything on their on their on the system, on the software. The software will not stop functioning. And then they have a list of all the qualified patches that they have approved. And I actually have this list downloaded and ready for you to see. It looks like this. And I'll quickly browse through it. That it has, I don't know, maybe about 20 different sheets for different software releases, filtered by different software releases, SR 15, 14, 13, as well as filtered by different operating systems. They've done a great job in terms of at least giving us the data in a useful Excel file. But what I'm trying to showcase over here is that it is showing for which operating system, which particular patch is approved, or they call it qualified or not, with which of their systems. So this particular patch is qualified for FactoryTalk Service Platform 6.4, 6.5, and then Side Edition, this. So they've listed not just the different OEM software itself, but the versions, on which versions have been tested with this particular patch, and they function the way they're supposed to. So if I scroll down, you will see this is all qualified. Well, it's 2020. Let's look at this one. So this particular one, they're saying is partially qualified, conditional qualification. So if you try and install this particular patch, it is applicable to these products and these versions. And then they have a, let me just come back here for filtering. So we can see the free span, so we can see the actual text and the heading. So they're saying that it is qualified if you have installed Rockwell Automation's roll-up, whatever that is, of September 2022. So the point is that not only do you have to look at what software is installed on your computers, you have to look at the versions, And then you have to look at that the patches from Rockwell are also installed before you can install the Microsoft patch. So similarly, I have another similar example of Siemens. I will just show that up here. So again, I picked a random one. Microsoft patch updates on WinCC. WinCC is one of their software from Siemens. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see it. And you can even read it and see what the issue is. Hey, why can't I install the patch? Well, you cannot install Microsoft patch KB 5058411 under Windows 11 version 24H2 because why? It can cause malfunction of the semantic software component automatic automation license manager. After installing this patch, the following behavior is indicated. Either you will have this or the ALM can no longer be open. So, it'll stop functioning. And what's the remedy? The remedy is to uninstall the patch, remove the patch, and then it's going to start working. So bottom line, the whole point of this discussion over the past 5 minutes or so is that the OEMs, the control system OEMs, they test each patch and see what it can break or what it cannot break, and then they publish that information. And all of us are expected to read all of this information, hundreds and hundreds of pages, and this is just one patch, I guess, and figure out whether I should install this patch or not. So I've done that exercise. I've simulated that in the next couple of slides. That what if I were to install, let's say I have two computers. One has Windows Server 2019 with Siemens PCS7 software, and I've randomly picked another one, Rockwell Factory Links Gateway, FactoryTalk Links Gateway version this, roll up pre-September 2022. So it's one server. And another one with Windows 10 version 1809, Siemens PCS7 software, and Microsoft Excel. All right, let's see. And I have two patches coming up. Should I install these patches on these two computers or not? The patch management part is not about how to install, it's about should I do it or not? So I will need a matrix like this. It's patch number 1, patch number 2. This patch, Microsoft says it is for Windows 10 1809 as well as for Windows Server 2019. And this second patch is for Excel 2013. So the first question I need to ask myself is that, do I need to install these two patches on Server 1 and Workstation 1, both of them, or not? Well, Server 1 for sure, because it has Windows Server 2019. So yeah, I need to install it here. On Workstation, it's Windows 10, which is here. So yeah, I need to install it here as well. Excel, there is no Excel here, and there is Excel here. So I don't need to install it on the server, but I need to install it over here. So that's the first part of the discussion, that where do I need to install the patch? Where is this patch even applicable? And then I have to go through the painful exercise of asking Siemens or downloading their file to figure out, hey, is this patch approved 21237 and 2275? Is it approved by Siemens for PCS7 and whatever version I have? And is it approved for Rockwell Links Gateway 6.30 rollup at AYZ? So I will copy this patch number 21237, come over to the Siemens file and look for 21237. And here's the patch. Or maybe I'll just filter it on 21237. Oh, yeah. So you can see that this patch is applicable to Windows 10 as well as Windows Server 2019. One is red and one is blue. If I go to the right and try to figure out, it's saying that for PCS7 VXY passed. All right. So for the Windows 10 version, it is approved, but for Windows 2019, it is not approved. Let's go back and check, double check on the left. The Windows 10 version is okay, but Windows Server 2019, it's not okay. And there is more specific instruction that compatibility issue with this update has been identified. The problem exists exclusively on domain controller. Please do not install it on the domain controller. Okay, so I need to figure out if that server is not a domain controller, then probably it's okay. Or if it is a domain controller, then I cannot install. So I go back and update my sheet over here. And I said that the first patch is approved by Siemens for workstation, but not for the server. Okay. Similarly, I need to do the same exercise for the Rockwell part. So I think it's Windows Server 2019. So I'll go over here. In fact, it's the same one. I had already opened this one. So 21237 patch seems like that it is qualified. All right. So I'll say for Rockwell Automation, it is qualified for server and workstation. I've done the same exercise just for the sake of, to speed things up. I've done this math for the second patch as well. It's not math, but it's lookup at least. And here's the answer that this patch is applicable here, not applicable, not approved by this, approved by this, not approved here, not approved here, applicable, no, applicable, yes, yes, yes. Over here, it's a question mark because I couldn't find it in the Rockwell list, so I don't know if they approved it or not. So I'm kind of stuck here. So should I install the patch or not? Should I install these patches or not? It doesn't seem like I can install here. So no, I cannot install here, no. Possibly no. I can probably install it over here. Okay, because it's I can assume, let's say, that Rockwell also approved it. But should I? I'm still not convinced that I should install this patch or not. I'm still not convinced. Why? Well, let's see what this patch is about. If I click on it, it's going to open this on Microsoft website, and this is the KB same number, and let's see what this patch is about. A security vulnerability exists in Microsoft Excel 2013 that could allow arbitrary code to run when a maliciously modified file is opened. So it seems like it's critical. Now, I'm still not sure if I should install it or not. I need to go back, look at that particular workstation, what that workstation is being used for, what kind of files are used on that particular workstation. Does it have is it possible to get a malicious file to this workstation in my control system environment? I mean, frankly, if this workstation is not critical, I'll just install the patch and reboot it. But if it is critical for some reason, then I need to do some more due diligence before deciding how much I can push operations to allow me to install the patch and reboot the computer. So it's a lot of effort to get to the point where I can decide whether I install the patch or not. So with all this pain, what's the summary? The summary is that there are four conflicting requirements that are pulling us in different directions when we try to do patch management. The biggest one we already talked about is the availability concern. We talked about the operational constraint. We talked about the OEM approval, and then cybersecurity. So my IT security folks, they're saying, hey, you got to install the patch because it's critical. Malicious code can be executed, but the operations folks are not allowing you because the plant is in a critical state and the OEM hasn't approved it yet. So I'm kind of stuck in the middle. So what do I do? I mean, there's only a handful of things that I can suggest right now. The most important part is know your environment. Before you even start talking about patch management, you need to know your environment. If you don't have a detailed asset inventory or a detailed inventory of your hardware and software and the versions and the previously installed patches, don't even think about patch management. So when we talk about this, I mean inventory, hardware, software, versions, because remember we talked about all the factory talk view version 6.30 and 6. You don't even know which version is installed on which computer. How will you decide whether you need to make the effort to install the patch or not? And I'm telling you, if you do this exercise, it'll make your life easier, because in most cases you will realize, well, I don't need to install the patch. So why go through the hassle? So you must have a very detailed inventory of your hardware, your software, your versions, and all that. Of course, that includes the previously installed patches. If you don't have that list, then how are you going to figure out if you need to install or not? If you're using something like WSUS, it's good, but still there are constraints when it comes to these segmented computers and disconnected networks. You need to understand how they're interconnected and how they're communicating. In most cases, people have some idea, but when I talk about all the assets, how they're interconnected and communicating, I've seen automatic patch management, or at least some kind of patch management solution installed on, let's say, the DCS. And people say, well, we're good. Well, what about the third-party systems and the disconnected systems and the local HMI next to the PLC? If you don't have all that documented on how you can connect to them or how they're communicating, you may not be able to decide whether to install the patch or not. And also, what are the possible attack vectors for each asset? So I gave the example of that workstation that, well, this workstation, if a malicious file is open, then it's going to cause this. It can exploit the vulnerability. Well, if there is no attack vector means there's no path to that computer. There's no USB. There's no routable path. Then the likelihood of a, a malicious file getting to that computer is quite low. And at the end of the day, remember I showed in the previous slide that all you're trying to do is reduce your risk. That's it. So if we all know that the equation of risk is likelihood and impact. So if the likelihood is low of a malicious file getting to that Excel computer, well, maybe you don't have to install the patch on that. So you do need to also consider, at least for those devices, for those computers which are critical, which cannot be, where the availability concern is more, you can consider the attack vectors and decide whether to install the patch or not. I think you guys are already doing it. Optimizing patching frequency, there is no need to install it. Even most people say on the IT side weekly, but even once a month, I would say no. Like I said, that it used to take us 3 months to have one patch installation run. How can I do it monthly? The best I can do is quarterly, but maybe 6 monthly is okay, or maybe once a year is okay, depending upon, take a risk-based approach, that what is the actual risk depending upon the interconnectivity, what other security controls you have in place, what is the criticality of the assets themselves, what are the attack vectors. If you have a well-defined network segmentation where you have the DMZ and the different layers in between, and you have a computer down at the lowest layer, not directly accessible through routable protocols, and the USB is disabled, you might as well leave it as it. In fact, if you have all those things, you can't even get the patch to that computer. If there is no routable protocol or routable path to that computer and the USB is disabled, how are you going to get the patch to that computer? So there are more considerations that need to happen. And you're not going to do that for every patch. That, okay, today we received a patch, so let me go through this whole exercise that Mubarik is telling about and spend 3 weeks figuring out if I need to install the patch or not. It's all about getting organized. If you start from this beginning, the first part of it, having the asset inventory, and you get organized, The initial part will be very challenging. Getting organized initially will be very hard. You have to go through a lot of pain. And I see a couple of questions are already in the Q&A, and they're very typical. And those challenges are there, that you don't have the asset inventory. Well, what do you want me to tell you? If you don't know what assets you have, how are you going to manage the patch? You will be installing some patches, but you will not have true security. You will have a feeling of security that, yes, I've installed patches on whatever I know, but if you don't know what you have, then you cannot manage the patch installation. So getting organized, once you have gotten organized, you have a better chance of making a system, making a process where every time or every second Tuesday when Microsoft releases the patches, it quickly tells you what to do. And by the way, there are a couple of software that do this stuff. We can talk about those separately as well. So that's, I think, pretty much I had for the discussion. This last part is important. This getting organized part. Oops, sorry. Um, And I'll leave it at that, and I'll open the forum for questions. All right, so I'll start with the first one. What's the difference between central patch management and central patch deployment? Excellent question. So patch deployment could be something like WSUS. What does it do? You can centrally I think that I'll just open this one. It's an excellent example because I like to use real scenarios, real cases for such discussion. Even Siemens is saying that you can decide, it's probably written somewhere over here, that it lets you decide deploy patch number KB12345 on workstation 43. So if you have all the computers added as part of WSUS, you download all the patches and you have a secondary server in the OT environment, and then it lets you pick that patch number 1, 3, and 48, install it on workstation 4, 8, and 90. And then you say done. And of course, you still have to go to that workstation and manually reboot it, but it helps you with the installation part of it. But the patch management part is deciding what patch to install. How will you decide that, okay, patch number 453, this whole thing that the discussion we had where you had this one. This is basically patch management. So if you have a patch management software that helps you decide based on what you see on the screen, and I'm doing it only for 2 patches for 2 devices, 1 server, 1 workstation, and 1 Siemens software and 1 Rockwell software. Imagine doing that for thousands of patches, hundreds of workstations and servers, each with different software. Doing it manually, it's practically impossible. So a central patch management system that helps you do this math, not the math, do this, like it's a simple, actually, calculation. Yes, no, yes, no, yes. If you add them all up, go ahead and install. So a central patch management software can help you with this one. Another question is, most OT environments don't have complete asset management inventory. How we decide what to patch and when to patch? And the answer is you cannot. You know, it's an answer a lot of people don't like, but if you don't know what you have, then there is no way you can decide what to patch and what you cannot patch. You don't even know what you have. So the first step is get organized, get this thing done. This thing that I mentioned, get organized, I'll keep repeating it because there is no shortcut to it. A lot of people ask me, hey, we need automatic solution. Automatic solution? Seriously? In control systems environment, automating the cybersecurity part is a pain. Sometimes I say controversial things that a lot of my fellow professionals disagree with, and I respect their opinion. But in control system environment, you cannot automate these things. It sometimes seems like an oxymoron that, hey, control system is about automation, and you're saying in automation systems you cannot automate security. Well, yes, because the automation system is for the process control, for the industrial facility, for the power plant, for the substation. That's where the automation is. And because the availability is the king, I cannot automatically do something as simple as installing a patch and reboot the computer and let the plant shut down. I cannot afford that. So until the world gets to a point where installing a patch doesn't, it guarantees that there is not going to be any impact on the industrial facility, you will have manual process. Another question, patch management. What were required? Why we do not adopt the technologies available today, such as REPL and other tools which can continue? Okay, well, that's fine. Like I said, there are some tools out there, some software that help you do that. And definitely, if you use patch management software like that, you will be able uh, to manage them more effectively than without such software. The next question is about what about patch management of the PLCs? Excellent question. Like I said in the beginning, of course, the question is about firmware. Um, in the beginning, I said Microsoft because that's the biggest pain. In a lot of cases, firmware obviously have similar updates. You can call them patches or whatever you want to call it. A new firmware is released that is basically closing some security loopholes. Yes, you need to do that as well. And the steps are exactly the same. First, you need to know all your assets, all your PLCs, all the software, all the firmwares. If you don't have a list of that, then forget about it. Obviously, upgrades on the PLC is a little bit more challenging than workstation and servers because in a lot of cases, workstation and servers, depending upon their criticality or if they have redundancy, it's a little bit easier to install the patches on workstation and servers. Uh, I have done firmware upgrade in live running plants, but I can tell you the level of sweat that was coming from out of my body when I was doing that. I don't want to do that again because it was a running plant and it was a redundant system. So yes, you can upgrade the firmware on secondary first and then on the primary and all that. But I don't want to be in that position. Sorry. Um, what's the practice in top refinery solution wise? What should be the minimum criteria of patch updates hardware and software wise, like rather than network segregation and firewall implementation, data diverse IPS are must or can be managed? Um, so it's a long question. I'm trying to get the gist of it. um, Segregation, network segregation, and so there are different security controls, as I've written on the screen, that there are alternate security controls you should consider before you decide if you're going to do patching or not, because patching itself is painful, but if you have other security controls implemented, like network segmentation or data diodes and all that, IPS is not necessarily a replacement of patch, but if you have other countermeasures implemented, then you can get away with having a less frequent, optimize the patch frequency, less frequent patching as opposed to running around every week, every month trying to install patch. Could you please recommend any asset inventory tool suitable for OT environments, especially ones that support patch management? I try not to do recommendation on the forum itself, but I will make a note of this and I'll send you a recommendation separately to the one who's asking question, or the rest of you can also send me a message and I'll be happy to recommend. I don't recommend products on the forum for obvious reasons. Next question is also about patch management tool. I'll be happy to answer that separately. Then there is one about, there's a question about why we don't use sandbox environment. Sandboxing is important. It's a different discussion. It's one part of the patch management that you have to test the patch in your in a sandbox environment. Yes, those are also important, but uh, from patch management perspective, I'm talking at a high level on just being able to decide what to install and when and where. If not WSUS, this is also about product. I'll send maybe a couple of recommendations separately. Is using Windows IoT LTSC more ideal compared to standard Windows OS? Maybe, but unfortunately, we are living in a world where probably my guess is 90% of industrial control system, and I'm strictly talking about workstation and servers, all the leading software that the Yokogawas and the Honeywells and Siemens and Rockwells and all, they all were run on Windows environment. So yeah, if there is an industry or there's a market for non-Windows operating systems or Windows IoT operating system, sure, but that's not where we are today. Is it possible to remove the patches after installation? In some cases, yes. Not all cases, but in some cases doable. And that's where another level of complexity comes in, that you have to, for example, if I go here, you have to read, this is, I'm showing the patch KBB to 5002275. You will have to read everything about it to, well, it says, yeah, you do have the option to remove this update, use the add or remove program item or the programs and features item in control panel. For more detailed information, please see the update on 903771. So the answer is it's possible in some cases, but not all. If Microsoft supports it, then good. Else, well, there is another option, but that's where your business continuity management comes into play, or your business processes come into play. I haven't talked about the installation part more because the topic today was management, but patch installation, one part of the process is taking backup of the device, of the computer, of the servers or workstation before you install the patch. So if you have taken the backup, you install the patch and it doesn't work, maybe the installation fails. Forget about removing it. Maybe during the installation, the whole thing crashes. Well, yeah, you better have a backup to restore and recover. If you have that, then you don't need to remove it. You can just restore the previous backed up version. There are a few more questions, but I think we are pretty much out of time. So what I will do is I'll just throw this up on the screen. I really appreciate everybody joining today. We have this session, this series, we do it once a month towards the end of the month. This time we had to reschedule it by a couple of days, but the next one is going to be on 31st of July. And the topic will be vulnerability assessment versus pen testing in OT environment, another interesting topic. I really appreciate the participation and active question answers. One request, if you all think that there's any particular topic that you're interested in, just send us an email on this email address that you see on the screen, and we'll try our best to address that topic. Somebody has raised their hand. Do you have any question? You can type it, or I don't know how to respond to that. Mamuna, somebody has raised their hand, so I'll let you know. I think that's just maybe it was taken down. So happy to entertain any other topics that you have that you want us to address in future webinars. But we'll close it here today. Thank you very much for your participation and hope to see you next time.